Welcome to another video on developing Kepler workflows, and in this video I'm going to be covering string concatenation. I've already opened the string concatenation workflow I have in the samples directory within workflows. And the reason I'm making this video is it's not really very well documented or clear on how you actually do string concatenation correctly. And I'll be explaining that as I proceed. So what I have here is I have a string constant, just a regular constant actor, and an expression. And all these are attached to a display, so when I run the workflow it will display the interpretation of these actors. So as you can see with the constants and the expressions, they actually interpreted this formula to create a string, which if you're a programmer this is what you would expect, since I have two parameters, user and server, and it actually takes those values and concatenates them with other existing strings to make these strings. And with the string constant this also kind of makes sense because it basically makes a string that's constant for whichever you assign it. Even though it's a formula, it doesn't render it. Although the confusing part is, in most Kepler examples you will actually see string constants used to retrieve variables. So if I change this and put in $signs, which if you're familiar with Linux and Unix systems you'll recognize this convention. So rerun the workflow. Now you'll see that with the $signs you actually retrieve the values from the parameters within the string constant. And so in workflow examples you actually see a string constant with a single parameter that is input to some other actor. So when you're trying to figure out initially how to do string concatenation, it can be very confusing, especially when you try to do something such as this, where you want user at server. So, but then this gives you an error because the @ sign is a special symbol. And you could get this to work by making another parameter called @ and then just assigning it the @ symbol and basically just doing $@ at. And I won't do that here because that'll give me another error. But now if I run this you can see that's at least closer. So it's fixable by the way I mentioned. But what makes it really confusing, if I make another parameter by copying this one and not quite yet, customizing the name, basically just giving it a different value. So say I have temp, like following this convention you would think that you need to use a $sign if you wanted to assign the value from a different parameter. So but that gives you an error because you're not supposed to use a $sign when assigning parameters. This actually works just fine. So now temp will actually have the value of user, and I can demonstrate that by doing this. Oh. That was interesting. That's a new one. Although you don't want that, because if okay, let's try this again. Okay, that looks better. So hitting enter doesn't work. So then we can see it still updates the string the same. So it wasn't until I came across constant and expression actors that I was able to figure out how to get all of this string concatenation, these problems to work, and assigning parameters to each other. Because occasionally you do want to have maybe even some combination of symbols as a different parameter because you're using it so often, or that combined with some other string. So, oh, and then I did something else wrong. Oh, maybe this is a good thing. Yeah, so I'm actually glad this happened because if I don't mention it anywhere else, you have to escape your strings. Since anyone who's familiar with programming will know this, but yeah, if you want slashes to show up, you have to do a double slash because the second slash escapes the first type thing. So, but anyways, yes, this is how you do string concatenation in Kepler. So you have to be aware of what actors you're using and how they actually operate. And yes, instead of string constants, you should use expressions. And actually, there's something else that makes expressions very useful. You can do this with most actors, but this one specifically understands if I add an input port, which you can just simply add an input. I'll call it X, and then I'll have it show the name. So now you can say I have an input port X, and if I grab another expression from over here, I can actually put in a value, and here I'll just do the string at. So the useful thing is this X actually becomes a variable within that expression. So now I can just put in an X like this, commit, and rerun the workflow, and you see we have the correct string, and this thing is all messed up because of what I did here, but you can see there's just one slash instead of two, since I was mentioning that you have to escape slashes. And actually backslashes, excuse me, that's what they're called. So now you should have at least the basic tools for designing at least some sophisticated formulas and such within workflows.